Welcome to Real Estate AI Flash, the podcast that helps real estate professionals understand how AI is changing real estate and the strategies you can use to win. I'm your host, Rajeev Sajja. In today's episode, we explore how AI can be used to make smarter marketing decisions and drive real business results. I'm joined today by Claudia Stallings, Chief Operating Officer of Wallace Real Estate, and Howard Ouellette, Director of Communications, to break down how they built a buyer migration report that helps their agents identify where their most likely buyers are coming from and how to position their listings more effectively. We talk about how to combine trusted data sources with AI, the importance of human oversight, and how agents can use this approach to win more listings and market properties with greater precision. Let's dive in with Claudia and Howard. Welcome to episode 121. I can't believe we're already in May, and we're recording this in late March. And today's guests are Claudia Stallings, Chief Operating Officer of Wallace Real Estate, and it's based in Knoxville, Tennessee, and East Tennessee, and of course, Howard Ouellette, Director of Communications as well. So we have 2-for-1 folks today. Usually it's always single guest, but we're going to pick the brains of two smart people. And I ran into Claudia in Vegas at the Leading RE conference, and she presented something I thought would be very valuable for our listeners. And here we are. So, Claudia and Howard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's begin with Claudia. Let's start with you. How did you get into real estate and bring us to today?
I started in real estate back in 2004 was when I got my license, and it was because we had moved to the beautiful city of Knoxville, Tennessee, and a couple of years later, my parents said, well, I think we'll retire there to be close to you. And so I kind of got the bug to help them shop for houses. And I had previous marketing experience at a television station, at a newspaper, back when newspapers existed. And so I brought that with me to real estate and just really found the career I was supposed to be in.
Nice. How about you, Howard?
So oddly enough, my wife had worked for Wallace Real Estate and told me that there was a position opening here, and that hopefully Claudia doesn't fire me for it. But I wasn't that interested. I had my own company at the time, and had moved out to Tennessee from California and wanted a little bit simpler life. And after talking with Claudia, I mean, honestly, she's the reason that I ended up in the real estate vertical. We kind of clicked really well, and there was a need that seemed like a good fit between her and I. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's awesome. So, and how big is Wallace Real Estate, Claudia?
We now have 12 offices in the East Tennessee area. We have about 500 agents, and right now we're selling close to around 3,000 properties every year.
Wow, awesome! Congratulations. So let's get into your first light bulb moment with AI, and you felt like this could change meaningfully how we serve our agents, our profession. What was that for you? Let's start with Howard.
Mine was probably 4 years ago, maybe even a little bit more. And for me, it really is there's a lot of ideas and things that I've worked in a lot of different verticals. And the challenge really is time, right? It's just time. I know what I want to be able to execute, but learning a lot of things. So for instance, I do minor coding, HTML, Java, PHP. But if I need to get into heavier coding, I don't have time to really learn Python and et cetera. And so it makes it impossible for me to do tasks. It's a matter of the amount of learning I need to do and the time. Even though I know what the executable is, or I know how to get there, I just don't have the time to do it. And so when AI came around, or at least came to me about 4 years ago, and I found that, hey, this could actually do some of the coding for me, and I don't have to learn it. And of course, you have to know where you want to get at the end of the road. That's where I go, man, I can now perform things that I've never been able to do because I can't learn 42 different professions, if you will. So that was my light bulb moment.
Yeah, like everyone's a coder now, right?
Yeah.
because you can talk natural language and it is wild. I feel like everybody's had their chat GPT moment, no matter when that was. And I feel like software engineering had their chat GPT moment with Claude Code this past December. That whole profession is sort of like in upheaval in many ways. So great call out there. So let's kind of get into, so the genesis of this podcast was I was bugging Claudia. We should get her on a podcast to talk about the buyer migration report that she presented, which had obviously human oversight, obviously leveraging AI. But so how it sort of came up. Claudia, give some background there, and then we'll dive into the components of the report.
Sure. Well, I guess that speaks to why there are two of us on the podcast today, because together we make one good brain. I bring the real estate information, and full disclosure, when you look at the NAR annual reports of who the average realtor is, that is me. I think I've got a little more years of experience than the average realtor, but I am of the age of the average realtor and all of that. So I feel like I speak for the people. And when we were looking at what can our marketing department, we have two people in addition to Howard who serve our agents in a marketing capacity. And when we were looking at what services can we offer that would be really valuable, agents are spending money on marketing. Are they spending it in the right place? And we've had for years a lot of platforms that allow us to place ads, and you can choose zip codes, cities. You can choose what you put in that ad. You can put links in that ad. But what we really didn't have a handle on was, are we placing that in the very best place? Is this the best use of the agent's money at the end of the day? So we started thinking about this buyer migration report. And I guess one of the funny thing is one of our large offices is right next to a U-Haul building. And during COVID, I just saw that parking lot fill up with U-Haul trucks. And my first thought is, people are moving here. And so then it was verified with our sales went out the roof and all of those things. So we're like, where are they coming from? Why are they coming? I think the why is really more important almost than the where once we really started digging into it. So that was the genesis of the buyer migration study. We wanted to make sure agents were spending their money, promoting their listings and themselves in the best places possible.
Do you guys call it internally BMR? Has it taken a life of its own, or do they call it buyer migration report?
We still just call it buyer migration report.
I'm glad it is, because BMR could mean a lot of things. Basal metabolic rate. We're talking, we're talking buyer migration report here. And we'll put a link for all of you listening. We'll put a link to a sample of exactly what we're talking about in the show notes, so you can kind of see the vision of what they've created here. So cool. So let's talk a little bit about what goes into like all the different data that you look at to pull this together, and where is AI involved and where is a human oversight involved? Just kind of let's double click on that.
I just want to start by saying we are real estate professionals, and we owe it to our consumers to do more than type into ChatGPT or any of the other sources out there to say, where should I advertise this property? We have got to reference data sources that we fully trust, that we know have good information. I don't want information necessarily from Reddit or sites out there that I've not necessarily heard of. I want real hard data. So that is what I challenged Howard to help us find. So.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. And going back into the pilot, co-pilot, if you will, whichever one we'll say either of us are. For me, I will just say I'm the nerd of the operations, but I need a Claudia in order to give me the agent's perspective of how they would go about doing it. So with that being said, there is oversight on everything. I'll go over into the 7 main components that we use for the data. We use migration patterns. That's obviously the easiest place to start. We use USPS. We use Internal Revenue migration data. We use United Van Lines, Atlas Van Lines migration reports. We also use U-Haul does publicly give annual reports as well. Those are the kind of the bread and butter of where we start. I don't use Census Bureau because Census Bureau is dated. Anybody who's used Census Bureau, you run into a problem. They're really good with psychographics, but maybe not so much. The migration patterns are sometimes 4 years old.
And it's much of a lagging indicator, right? Census is a real lagging indicator.
Yes.
So before you move on from that, let me double click a little bit on the categories that you just talked about, Howard.
Yeah.
If a broker is listening to this, agents listening to this, is it mostly purchased or acquired? Talk about where you got the data from.
Everything is free public source. I would say where some people, this will be a really good point to bring up. We had looked at purchasing data for Tennessee, and the name escapes me at the given moment, but there's a primary data source that everybody uses. Redfin uses it, for instance, and it would cost us $12,000 a month just because we have to get the whole state. We can't just get Knoxville, etc. That obviously is not feasible for us. So then I said, well, who's actually leveraging or who's using the data? And I think people sleep on this. Redfin uses the data. And I know we look at everything as a competitor, but you shouldn't. And so what I do is, even with the buyer migration report, that's publicly accessible, right? Knoxville. So they buy the entire United States. Why wouldn't I leverage the fact that all that data exists on Redfin, and I could tell AI to, we'll say, borrow that information for my own personal
available, and you're just pointing your AI to trusted sources that have the data is really the point takeaway.
Correct. And by doing that minor step, just understanding the way of where the data lies, it saved this company $12,000 a month, right? So everything that I'm giving you is free. It's public data. It's out there. It doesn't cost you a dime. It doesn't cost us a penny to run this report, other than, yes, we pay the $20 a month for ChatGPT. And we're running this through GPT. We're not running it through Windsurf with Claude or anything, right? Just the basic stuff that most people use. And by the way, this was built off of GPT-2. So there's no excuse, right? It's only gotten more and more intelligent.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, go ahead. Finish up.
I would like to say this because I think that this is extremely important. If people don't understand, there's a major difference between utilizing a project within ChatGPT and doing general chat. Now, this is a GPT that we built, but people need to understand too that a project is really not much different. It's just you could share one, and one is just locked in. But this is not a chat-based system, right? So this means that there's source material, there's an instruction set, and there are some things. So I would say if this is something that somebody listening to this goes, hey, I want to get my hands in this, you're going to have to understand how to build a project and understand the workflow of that, and or by extension, then you could create your own GPT, which is not complicated.
No, and look, I think if you're listening to this, you can take a couple of steps. One is start interacting with the regular. First of all, get a paid account. Okay, you can't be a professional and run this free stuff, especially in this day and age of what we're trying to do to be an AI fluent agent. The first thing you can start to do before you even get to start to building what Howard and Claudia are talking about is start interacting with chat and actually ask some of these buyer migration questions. Look at the report template. And then you'll start to get your own version of it in regular chat. And the next step you can take is build custom instructions. And we talk a lot about custom GPTs on the podcast. I've published a bunch of them. And you can build it. To your point, it could be a project, but I would suggest go to custom GPT route anyway, because eventually if you want to share it with others, it's a lot easier to share it. It can probably do a lot more on a consistent, repeatable basis, which is really where custom GPTs thrive. So that's good to know. So if you're listening to this, technically you could do this on a paid ChatGPT account. You can get there. But based on where your AI literacy is, you got to kind of take some baby steps to get to this finished report. So let's talk a little, anything else you want to add on the AI side of things before we get to the human oversight, which I think is also very important I want to talk about?
I mean, I think this will be a good leadway into the human oversight. And Claudia can maybe speak to this one real quick because we just ran into this recently, but I think the biggest challenge with AI and human interaction, and everybody goes, oh, AI, it's, and we go straight to doom and gloom and AI is going to take over. I don't foresee that, at least over, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years, even from the programming standpoint. And it's funny that you brought that up. There still is human oversight, right? You need somebody that could see the error, and we are not at a point yet where we have general AI. Right now, that's a different conversation. We are not there. In other words, it still needs a human driver. And so we ran into this with the CMA recently. And I think that this is a good segue into human interaction and why it matters. So if Claudia, you want to speak to that.
Yeah, well, as we were developing this report, Howard came flying in my office. He was excited. He's like, look at this, check this out. Because I always use a house I used to live in when I taught how to use the MLS, how to pull comps, all of that. So in our training program, because I know, I lived in that house for 12 years. It's a big neighborhood. I can always pull comps. It's perfect for that thing. And so he ran an initial buyer migration report. Who would buy this house? Where do I need to advertise for this property? And I'm looking through what was produced.
It was bad. She'll not say it. It was terrible.
It didn't describe my house at all. It started off and then it hallucinated, and so it took us months to refine what we have presented today. But it took that human element going back and forth several times before I said, yes, this is on target. But you cannot trust the very first thing that comes out of the machine. It's got to be refined.
Yeah.
By somebody who knows what they're doing in the real world.
So let's talk a little bit about how long it almost seems like Howard is the AI on the podcast and Claudia is the human, although both of you are fully human. In terms of the insights you're bringing.
We're essentially one person, believe it or not.
Well, I believe this to be true in the world we're living today. Human plus AI will always win versus humans alone and AI alone. That's where we are as a society.
Agreed.
So how long did this take from Howard flying into your office, Claudia, on that day to where we are when you launched it and you felt really good about buyer migration report?
I would say we probably worked on this 4 or 5 months just from the concept of it to we think we have something that will work.
And I'll tell you, if you're listening to this is why I feel like I'm blessed to be at this intersection of talking to smart people like you and sharing that knowledge with the world of real estate. So if you're listening to this, you don't have to necessarily go through 4 or 5 months of trials and tribulations. You can look at I shouldn't say BMR because people are going to go on the buyer migration report of Wallace Real Estate and kind of say, okay, you can get a head start, folks, if you're listening to this. That's the beauty of getting smart people like who we have today. So let's talk through the fulfillment process. So the agents you offered, I know there's a small fee you charge, but it's obviously there's work involved. Do they just order it, and what is the speed at which they get it? So just kind of talk to the fulfillment process of the report.
Sure. So we've got an online intranet, and within that, we've got a marketing tab, and we have a full menu of marketing services. Everything that is ordered through our marketing team is done just through a Zoho form. That Zoho form goes to the marketing person who needs to address that particular thing. The migration report is no different. But in that form, we are asking very specific questions about this property. We are asking them some things related to, not only just square footage and number of bedrooms, but describe the location that it's in. Are there school districts? What is what is the greater picture of this? Much like the information you have to have when you go and you comp that property.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's been so long. It's been so long since we actually built this. We worked together. I will say there were two things that made this not work to immediately work. And what we call them as buyer profiles. Now, this is to where the IP of Claudia truly came in, is if this is always the way that I explain AI, right? AI sees everything. Now that's where it gets its hallucinations, as we call it, right? Because it sees too much. And you need to funnel in what you actually need AI to do for a particular task. So the more granular you get, the better the result you get with AI. When I was initially running the reports, I was letting AI kind of go out there too freely. And what ended up happening is, with the property that Claudia talked about, she had said, well, there's this particular buyer that I know is going to be interested in this home, right? So for instance, if it's a single story rancher on flat land, right, we're going to hit an older demographic. Like that would be a good catalyst. And once we started inputting in human data of the intelligence of the agent, of who the prospective buyer is, then we really started getting results. Does that make sense? So there was the control through Claudia and her IP, and which we leverage now through marketing. We have Sharon Long, who's been in this vertical for 30 years. She also inputs that in. So I would say that this thing fundamentally breaks. It's extremely important for people to hear this. It fundamentally breaks if you put in the wrong buyer data, buyer profile in the first step. So I could run the report, just me, Howard, and I'm going to make a mistake because I'm not an agent, right? Claudia will run the same exact report, same GPT, mind you. And the first question it asks is there a particular buyer profile or do you want me to guess, meaning AI? If AI guesses, we would probably hit a 60% hit ratio versus if Claudia does it, it's 100% hit ratio. And this is interesting enough. One other thing to add, we also weigh out, we rank and we weigh out different things. So one thing that I look at is I look at the amount of volume that Zillow is getting hit in a particular area at a particular time, right? And it looks at historical data as well as current data. So for instance, if I look at Zillow right now and I say, how much activity is Hardin Valley getting at this given moment, right? So we're in March right now. And it says this is the peak activity in March, then I deduct 2 months of time and start marketing 2 months prior. And that has a value associated it, let's say from 1 to 10. And I say that activity to me is an 8. It weighs really heavy, right? Versus maybe if I get age demographics or psychographics off of citydata.com or something like that. That to me is going to be weighted maybe 4, if that makes sense. And
well, I think it's important also to say we have also said follow all fair housing
100%
regulations. So whatever we get out of this, while we have an idea of who we think this home is going to attract, the end results just tell us where we can find the most likely person who may be interested in this, regardless of any of those fair housing regulations.
100%. A couple of things that stood out in this conversation, this last piece, which is one is AI doesn't have the agent insight. So the agent insight, to your example, Howard, drives the prompt's accuracy and the output, and really at the end of the day, satisfaction for your agent.
yes.
So AI can get you almost to the finish line, but it's not going to get you fully there if you don't have the agent oversight. So that's a human and agent plus AI is, I think you've done a really good job, and I'm sure. So how many buyer migration reports have been run since you've
Oh gosh, I don't know.
We launched this. Gosh, how long has it been now?
I don't know.
A year?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So this is probably about a year we've launched it, and oddly enough, I just had to do an aggregate study of all the migration reports. So we have 647 that we had run at that given time. I will say this too. We have agents that leverage this for getting listings. And I would say that there are dedicated agents that run it all the time, and they just use it as listings. And, I'll knock on wood here. They have never lost a listing when they show this buyer migration report.
Well, and I'll also add that the information it gives us is why is this buyer moving? And then as long as that agent understands that they need to incorporate that language in their description, in their photos, in the captions on their photos, so that then that listing is seen, then that is also a critical piece. You can't just advertise to the places our report says to advertise to. You have to take it to the next level and put that information in your MLS listing.
Yeah, and I think one of the good pieces of what you're sharing here is, we're living in an age now where consumers are using AI. Buyers and sellers. If you look at the 1,000-watt report, it said, I think 45% that are using it in the real estate process. That was Jan 1, and I suspect that number is inched higher. So if you're walking into a listing appointment or a buyer consult, assume they're using it and show how you use it responsibly to lead to better outcomes for your clients, right? So I think you got to lead with it, be proactive, and you obviously gave them a nice little tool that they can leverage for listings as well as buyers. So let's kind of, I want to kind of get into where are you doing anything for, I know you're using buyer migration reports to get listings also. Are you doing anything on the seller side? Are you cooking up anything else as we finish here? Let's talk about that.
So we do have some ideas for the seller, but to be honest, the phase 2 that we have done, and we've already released it, is we do it for agents on how to and where to market themselves. I think that agents have a propensity to just look at other agents and go, I need to do that specific area. And I'll give a little bit of IP away here. Ultimately, it looks for voids or holes in areas in the market that are not being targeted, and sees opportunity, saying, hey, look, this is undersaturated, here's oversaturated, and kind of pick those little pinholes and make suggestions based off of areas in which that an agent wants to market themselves.
Great call out, Howard. The thing that, one of the things, you built this over a year ago, like you launched over a year ago, and the speed at which, and it's built on OpenAI, ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. And GPT itself, like I've never seen a technology transforming at the speed at which it's transforming. So you built this buyer migration report that is actually getting better every time there's a new engine that's released underneath it. You have built it on 3.5, and now we're like at 5.4.
Yeah.
Next week it could be, by the time this comes out, we're probably at 6, the way that this is going. So I think the engine working underneath your instructions is going to get progressively better as you're adjusting it. So, I can see how this can be a really good tool that allows you to recruit, retain some of your top people as well. So,
well, and if I could just touch on that, I think that goes back into Claudia's IP, right? Because the process itself doesn't change. The data does, but Claudia was in control of the processes, right? And because of that human interaction, it does exactly what you suggested, to where it just leverages AI as the tool to expedite the actions in which that Claudia had come up with.
For sure. All right, we could talk all day long, because this is I like to geek out on this stuff, but we have to finish. I like to ask. I'm going to ask each of you one question, maybe based on your background. So, Claudia, you've been in real estate how long?
Since 2004.
4. Okay, so you're over 2 decades. So if you were a real estate professional starting in business today, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give, even if it's your younger self? It could be AI, anything, business, doesn't matter.
The piece of advice I would give anybody starting out today is don't neglect the fact that you need to spend your money and your time promoting yourself.
Yeah.
And through things like our buyer migration report, where we can say, let me show you what I can do. Don't keep that under a cover and say, I only pull that out after I get the listing. You're going to have to make a little bit of investment. You're going to have to, it's very hard for brand new agents to really champion themselves, because it's hard to do that. So, affiliate with a brokerage who is exploring things like this and can put into your hands, just because you filled out a form, something that really kind of takes you to the next level and shows your clients that you really can provide superior service.
100%. All right, Howard, this question is for you. So are you a book or a podcast person?
Neither.
I might have to go back to Claudia on this one. So so let me ask Claudia that question, and then I'll come back. Howard, I have a question for you after.
Okay.
So are you a book or a podcast person, Claudia?
I'm a podcast person. I gotta multitask.
Okay, so give me the one podcast that has probably helped you the most. And everything, we get a little bit from everything. I mean, I listen to like 6 or 7 per week. But give me one personal or professional that has really meaningfully shaped you and influenced you more than others.
Gosh, that's a tough one. I probably would have to reference my list to see which one I go back to the most often. There is, I like to watch, and there's a couple of them that are like this, that are agent facing. So in my role as COO, I want to know, what are the agents experiencing? What are they experimenting with? What are they doing? Things like that. So there's actually there's a whole lot of podcasts that speak from the agent perspective with agent suggestions and things like that. So I follow a few of those that I like very much, just to get ideas that I can bring back here and then implement for services and tools and things like that. But one in particular doesn't stand out over the other, because I choose by topic title.
Fair enough.
So
I think a lot of people do that now, right? Because I mean, you have only so much airtime, so you almost have to pick and choose. So that's a good takeaway. So tune into podcasts. There's several good ones, folks, in the real estate industry. I think there was an Inman article recently that talks about top podcasts you should kind of consider. So kind of go in and dig out. All right, Howard, this question is for you as we finish. Besides ChatGPT, what is the one other AI tool that you're most excited about and using?
Claude would definitely be my next answer. Now I use that through Windsurf, which is a third-party app that allows you to use multiple LLMs. I would say Claude, and I do leverage Gemini quite a bit. And I'll say why. I look at chat as my overall, and because it's the most balanced, if you will, if I could say balanced. I use Claude when I need something that's a little bit more pragmatic and will just do black and white task. 1 + 1 = 2. It never equals anything else. And I use Gemini because I do a lot of marketing on YouTube, and YouTube is owned by whom? Google. So why would I not leverage their technology that goes through Google? Anything that I need that's on the Google platform, I'm going to stay on Gemini. I will say,
go ahead.
I also do this, and this will be a really fun test for your audience. If you really want to see something cool, take Claude as the control, take Chat or Gemini, doesn't matter, and have them converse by one another, and having you as the oversight or the mediator, right? So you could actually have 2 LLMs talk to one another. You have to copy and paste the prompts. But anyway, those are mine.
Look, I think we're in a world today, as at the time, I always have to say at the time of this recording, because it could change tomorrow, is different LLMs are good for different things.
Yes.
Okay. And it's a great place to start. You can start with ChatGPT. But if you want to do like image editing, video, you may go to Nano Banana and VO3 with Gemini. Like, I mean, there's different use cases for different things. But anyway, this has been a fun conversation. Claudia and Howard, thank you for taking the time. And I hope I can see you in real life sometime real soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting us today.
Yes, thank you.
If you found value in the show, follow it so you're notified every Wednesday when new episodes drop. Share it with someone in the industry you care for, and leave us a review as it helps us reach more real estate professionals like you.